Today we're going to build a dummy drawer to give us the spacings for our panels on our sysport. First, here's the jingle. The panel spacings are going to be set by the width of a systainer. The drawer will have 18mm sides to secure the systainer. There will then be attached a 350mm full extension runner, and then we will have the end panel itself, and then we will have the same on the other side. So the distance between this panel and this panel sets the spacings for our panels on the sysport unit. So what I want to do is to build a dummy drawer, and I will use that to space out the panels. I'm using the offcuts from the big panel cut, and I'll just lie the drawer runner against that edge, draw a line, and I want two at this length. The two sides cut, I can just add those, put those onto the box, and take a measurement for the front piece. So there you go. So that gives me a very simple frame for my systainers. Now I want to mount the drawer runs on the sides. Just make sure that this edge here is just flush with the front edge there, more or less. It's not critical for this. Make sure it's sitting, the back part is flat against the table, and just drill a couple of small pilot holes. Be careful I don't go through into the systainer. And now I can just put the side paddle on. So what I've ended up with is a very simple template, a drawer template. I know that my systainer will fit inside the drawer, nice and snug. I've got my runners on the outside, and therefore I know exactly the spacings I need for the panels on our base, the distance from here to here. And I'll use this as a template. So what I'm now going to do, I'm going to put some dominoes in my dummy panels on the outside here, and then I can start to cut the domino joints into this panel, and I'll use a template as we move along. Let's do that now. I've marked my side panels with a top and a couple of face marks, therefore I know my dominoes are going to go into the bottom and they will be referenced off the face mark. The material we're using is 18mm. A good rule of thumb for any tenants is use a third, so 18 divided by 3 is 6, so I'm using the 6mm dominoes. The dominoes I've got in my set are 14mm long, so these are the 6 by 40mm. Now remember, the dominoes are going to go into the end panels, but they're also going to go into my base panel, and my base panel is 18mm deep. So if I was to go half, 20 and 20 into the base panel, 20 into the side panels, I'll actually puncture through the bottom of that. So I'm going to go into the base panel by 15mm using the stop on the domino. 40 minus 15 is 25, so therefore I'm going to plunge down into this piece 25mm. So I set my depth of cut 25mm. I'm going to use these stops here, the black stops, to come up to the end of the panel, and that will make sure that all my cuts are consistent. Now one thing to notice, that the shallowest depth of cut from this reference face to the centre of the cutter is 10mm. Ideally I want it halfway down, which is 9mm, so this is going to be offset from the centre of my material by 1mm. And that's important, and we'll come back to that shortly. But for now, let's cut these dominoes. So on the bottom, my face is up. I'm going to put a little bit of help in here, reference. Make sure this is going to all work, no power connected yet. Off that stop, yes, I can plunge into there. Off that stop, yes, I can plunge into there. And everything looks good, everything looks free, so now we'll go ahead and we'll make these cuts. I now want to go ahead and put the dominoes into this board. And you can see what we're going to do. We'll use this as a reference. I can mark off here my next dominoes and move that along, and that's going to give me the perfect spacing for each of my systainer ports. Now, remember that offset we were talking about? That 10mm where we wanted 9? Can you see that? That's the offset there. If I reference from this edge here, as you normally would, then that offset is going to be too far over. To allow for that offset, I'm going to reference off the end of the board that's actually going to go in this hole. Now I don't want this one actually flush to the end. I want a couple of millimeters spare, and I'm more interested that this board is lined up and square with the base than anything else. Okay, and just slide that up so it's less, so it's going to give me around about a millimeter overhang, and somewhere around about there will be good. Now if I reference my domino off this surface, then I know I'm going to have my offset in the right place. Make sense? This is still set for 25 millimeters. I want to readjust this so it comes in at 15 millimeters on the domino. With the dominoes cut, I can now put my dominoes in here. No dominoes in this end just yet. I can now put that into my holes here, and I now have a little bit of adjustment where I can just make sure that front is nice and level. With that in place, I can now bring this next panel up. Make sure it's all flush with the front. So it looks pretty good and tight. Clamp it into position. Remove this. Again, line the front up. And there we have it. That's all our positions for all our panels laid out. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's get the dominoes cut into each of these now. Now I've not decided what the face is on these yet, so it doesn't really matter where I put my offset. So I'm going to, for no reason, use this surface here as my offset. So I'll just cut the dominoes through here and the offset will take care of itself. I want to set this back to 25 millimeters. And that's pretty much it. Now it was at this point that I realised I'm a panel short. I needed 6 panels and not 5. I'll make another one and I'll drop that in. But you can see how that's going to work now. So each of those now is sized perfectly to put the systainer drawer in it. But before we do anything else, I now want to put the rows of 32 millimeter holes in each of these boards, ready to take the shelves. I'll see you next time.